I want to welcome you to the 14th Conference of ISAI, in the historic city of Porto. I regret I cannot speak to you face to face and see my friends of the past conferences. But the doctor told me that I am too old to travel from my home in Kibbutz Nachshonim. There is an old legend in my family that our ancestors came from Portugal. There is another reason which I wanted too much to be with you today. I want to thank Professor Yolanda Espina and the Catholic University of Portugal for hosting our conference. I want to thank the chairs of the workshops and all of you for coming here to share your idea of Europe, past, present, and future. I want to say a few words on how our society, ISAI, and our journal's European legacy came into being 30 years ago. But this has something to do with my personal history. I was born in Cairo. I was raised in a traditional Jewish home at home and spoke Arabic and French. The Cairo of my youth was more beautiful than Paris. It was vibrant and cosmopolitan. I remember my disappointment of seeing Paris for the next time. It could not compete with Heliopolis, where I lived. When I was 17, I took an exam to get a job in a bank. I had to write an essay on what Ismail Pasha said when the Suez Canal was opened. He said, "My country is not in Africa, we are in Europe." I think I passed that exam because I identified with his view of Egypt. I got to work in the bank and worked there for the next 10 years. During those years, I became an ardent Marxist Zionist and immigrated to Palestine in 1944 to live in an Israeli kibbutz. I took my mathematics books with me, but in the end I abandoned mathematics for philosophy. This was the result of meeting my wife and partner of the next 60 years, Sasha Talmor, who introduced me to English philosophy. We got married, founded the Kibbutz Nachshonim, and continued our studies together. The kibbutz was a unique social experiment, an attempt to create perfect socialism and equality. Our hope was to create a new man, one whose social conscience overruled any other desire. For the next 60 years, Sasha and I managed to combine our life in the kibbutz with our studies. In 1979, we founded our first journal, History of European Ideas, which was published by Pergamon Press. Later, we founded the European Legacy, published by Routledge. We founded ISAI in Bellagio, Italy, 30 years ago. Our conferences have held in many universities: Helsinki, Aalborg, Bergen, Graz, Pamplona, Valletta, Nicosia, Ankara, and many more. The number of participants stands at 7,000, not counting the present conference. I took over the themes of our conferences: European nationalism, European integration, European identity, and Europe changing context. I look over the thousands of passages of the European legacy, and when I see, strengthens my belief that the European tradition will persist and grow even in Europe, if no longer the center of the world. When I look back over my own journey in philosophy, I see that I was always drawn to the question of the relationship between language and action. The question reflected the two phases of my life: work, teaching philosophy, and being an active member of the kibbutz. For me, philosophy was never just an academic profession. It was a political commitment. As a young man, I totally identified with Marx that the aim of philosophy is not to interpret the world, but to change it. Yet, with the changes that have occurred in our lifetime, as with the decline of the kibbutz way of life, I slowly looked my faith in Marxism and not in the moral message. So, by process of elimination, I would have to say that I came closest to being a follower of David Hume. And for Hume, the center of philosophy is ethics. He maintains a firm distinction between language and action. He claims that because causality is not a matter of logic, but only a way to truth through experience and experience, habit rules all, so that if we want to reduce the gap between is and the ought, between matter of fact and the way we desire things to be, we should take the gap between the word and action more seriously. To conclude, I reconciled the conflicting parts of my identity by reminding myself that that what counts in how we act in the world is what we do, and doing, as you said, is often independent of ideas. I wish all the organizers, chairs and participants a successful and beautiful conference. Thank you all and shalom. My God.
כל הכבוד, אתה נפלא.
זה קונפרנס שלך, חלק שלי.
נו, איזה ירושה קיבלתי. עזרא יוצא מן הכלל. כל